But fellas, one of my favorite topics to talk about, and champs as well, baby face or heel. Now, for those who may not know what babyface or heel means in wrestling terminology, babyface means good guy hero, heel means bad guy villain, and a tweener is someone in between. So I came up with a list of athletes or celebrities, and myself and the panel are going to decide whether they are a babyface, heel, or tweener. Grant, I'm going to let you go first. Aaron Rodgers.
I think this one's obvious. I mean, heel. Like, you held an entire organization hostage. You got injured in a year. Granted, you got hurt your first game after they built the team around you. They had to limp through their season with Zach Wilson. They finally get you for a full season. And then you proceed to have if not one of the worst seasons of your entire career. And then you get into when they tell you they're moving on, your first reaction is, I don't even remember what he said. He said this on Pat McAfee's show, and it's just now leaving
about
my
the
mind.
money.
About the money, exactly.
He said it's not about the money. Something about I'll pay for like $10 million. If they give me $10 million, I'll take it.
Ha! Liar. But yeah, the dude is like wandering in QB purgatory, hoping that the Steelers will make up their mind. He's a heel. There's not really a dispute on this one.
BRF.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is definitely a heel. I mean, I guess the thing that really kind of rubs me the wrong way about Aaron Rodgers, I understand having a belief and having a confidence and, and playing a position and feeling like you can still play it at a high level. I can admire that and I can appreciate that. But we saw you last year. We saw you last year with the Jets. And those numbers, even though you look at those numbers and you're like, oh man, well, he had a decent year. He had a good year with the Jets. Oh boy, y'all gotta dig deep and look into some context because Aaron Rodgers had some bad games last year. I mean, he looked his age last year. So the Jets doing the right thing and moving on for him and just what's been going on since, like, I ultimately do feel like Pittsburgh is probably gonna mess around and sign him. I really do. I feel like they're going to sign him. But I mean, it's just like the attention you try to bring to yourself, he's not worthy as far as like being still called an elite quarterback as far as like what he was at his peak with the Green Bay Packers. He's not that guy anymore. And it's not just in it, but at the same time, though, it's not just the sports. It's the politics, his views on things, and just, I mean, he's a diva. He's a diva. I mean, it's like he's really as bad, if not worse, than the guy he replaced in Green Bay and Brett Favre. I mean, there's really nothing more you can really say about Aaron Rodgers other than he is. I mean, he is definitely a heel. And I've stated that he needs to go ahead and just call it a career. I mean, you got nothing else to prove. You're one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. You're arguably a top 5 quarterback in the history of the National Football League. Go ahead and ride off to the sunset. You got nothing to prove. Even though I do think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to sign him, he's not. He's at this point in his career, he's not likable at all. There's nothing about him that can even persuade you to like him a little bit at this stage in his career. I mean, he is a definite heel. There's nothing tweener about him. There's no gray area. He's a heel. He is not a very likable person right now in any facet. So, I mean, hey, if you support him, that's your choice, and I'm not going to sit here and criticize you for it. But the man ain't nothing but it. He's a straight up, laced, flat out, he's a heel. I mean, just no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
I don't know if I want to ask Champ this question. I think we know exactly what he's going to say. Do you want to say it, Champ, or you want to like move on?
He's a heel, and it's not just the arrogance, because we can print. If you're good enough, people can deal with the arrogance. It's you burning bridges every single darn where you go. It's like everybody you know you had a problem with. Like, come on, bro. What kills me about this is if he wasn't a quarterback, we would have been hearing about his attitude more and more. I will say this again. If he wasn't a quarterback, you would have heard about his diva attitude more and more throughout his career. Remember how they treated T.O., although he was one of the top receivers in the league? And how he would burn bridges everywhere he was going, getting coaches fired, doing stuff like that. Like I said, when you're a quarterback, people consider you the leader of the team. So when you are yelling at people and doing all that stuff, it's considered passion. But whereas, someone in another position was doing that, it's not considered passion. It's considered exactly what it is, you being a diva. Not to mention the things that you said about Jimmy Kimball, the things that you said about Travis Kelce when it was unwarranted, the things that you did in the media, how you tried to deceive the media, got caught in a lie, and then, called everybody the W word. So let's not, it goes far beyond football. Like I said, if he was in another position, like if he was a running back or a wide receiver or even a linebacker or a defensive player, you would have heard about, people would have been calling him a diva a long time ago. Like I said, and T.O. is a prime example of it. Was at the highest level for so many years, but yet they criticized the crap out of him. But because he was a quarterback, he got the benefit of the doubt, although he had problems with Mike McCarthy, although he had problems with even Matt LaFleur before he left the team, got Robert Saleh fired.
Remember what he did Thursday night game against the Patriots? Remember when he pushed them?
Yeah, remember he pushed Robert Saleh. If any other player outside of the quarterback position would have done that, that would have been a whole nother story. If T.O. or anybody else or anybody outside of a quarterback would have done that, it would have been a whole nother ball game. But the quarterback sell the tickets. Let's just keep it real. So yeah, he is a undisputed heel. And the thing about it is, he's been a heel for a long time. It's just now that you can't camouflage it with his ability. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like one of those little snobby little idiots that you see in high school. Now you don't have being the varsity football player to back up how much of a you-know-what that you really are. Now that high school fame has been stripped from you, now you're exposed to what you are. And now you're still trying to hang on because that's all you got at a certain point. But he's a diva. He is a heel to the 25th power, as I said last week about another individual. But yeah, if it wasn't for him being a high-level quarterback, he would have gotten this type of behavior that he has exhibited would have gotten exposed a very long time ago. Like I said, you see it at the wide receiver position when guys are divas and they get exposed. You see it at the running back position. You even see it on the defensive side of the ball when guys get exposed for being diva. Had he not been a quarterback, he would have gotten exposed for this behavior a long, long time ago, and it would have been front page news. And the thing is, unlike a lot of people who will willingly admit their mistakes, T.O. and even Antonio Brown to a certain extent. Remember, Antonio Brown went on Ryan Clark's show and said, Mike Tomlin very much looked out for him and almost brought him to tears when he talked about it. If you remember that interview.
The Pivot podcast, yeah.
Yeah, the Pivot podcast. So those guys, okay, I made a mistake. Ben Roethlisberger doesn't do that. He gets on television, calls people the W word, this W word generation, when they don't agree with something. No, you're a liar. You're a diva. And if you just came out and just said that and just acted like it, then guess what? Nobody will criticize you. But because, it's kind of like the minute that I feel uncomfortable, I want to criticize the masses because guess what? I'm being called out on my own bull junk. But he's a heel to the 25th power, and there's nothing about it. Like I said, had he not been a quarterback, it would have been exposed a long time ago. Like I said, with certain quarterbacks, they were not divas. When you talk about Peyton Manning, you knew he was not a diva. He was just passionate about winning. And you saw that as he entered the latter parts of his career, how guys were quick to want to stand up for him. People you can never say anything bad about Peyton Manning towards one of his teammates. Versus with Aaron Rodgers, everybody comes out and say how much of a diva that he was at the beginning. You don't ever hear that about Tom Brady, Elway, or even a Brett Favre. You remember, you didn't hear about Brett Favre being a diva until, guess what? He didn't know if he was going to retire or unretire in his last year. Other than that, you didn't really hear about it. The players that played with him loved it.
Yeah, they love Favre. He was known for being a practical joker himself.
Yeah. He was a ribber too, essentially the Kurt Hennig of football. So yeah, I mean,
or rest his soul, Owen Hart.
Or rest his soul, Owen Hart. Yes, exactly. That's why we call you the New Jersey Genius. But yeah, there's no tweener about it. He's a heel, and guess what? It's going to continue that way until he redeems himself in the eyes of at least the media at a certain point. Is it going to hurt his Hall of Fame candidacy like it hurt many others? No, it's not. But like I said, had he been at another position, it would have. Look at Mark Gastineau. Look at Antonio Brown and how that's going to affect him. Remember how they held T.O. out until for
3 years. They kept T.O. out, and Shannon. I'm glad you mentioned that, Champ, because Shannon Sharp, he was in the Pro Football Hall of Fame room, and when Brett Favre's name was mentioned, not one time they mentioned Favre's past, the Vicodin addiction, him spending time in Bankhead, the texts, the pictures he sent to the girl who used to work for the New York Jets. Not one time.
No, and they're not going to, because guess what? His teammates loved him, and guess what? When you are beloved and you don't go around here stepping on everybody's feet, their toes and their ankles, then guess what? You're going to get a lot of leniency. Like I said last week when you asked if Tim Tebow was a heel or babyface, and remember what I said.
Yeah,
you're going to get a lot more of the benefit of the doubt when you are not difficult to deal with. You're going to get a lot more opportunities, and people are going to give you the benefit of the doubt when you're not difficult to deal with. But with Aaron Rodgers, people are like, no, you need to go ahead and retire because we're not willing to deal with you another year. And like I said before, if there's anything that could cost Mike Tomlin his job, anything in the world, it would be bringing Aaron Rodgers on that team with two very emotional and just overbearing wide receivers and adding him into that mix. And that would just be a recipe for disaster. And I would hate to see what would happen to Mike Tomlin and his career at Pittsburgh if he was to bring him into that locker room.
Well, first of all, I don't think Dr. Phil could handle that type of catastrophe.
Hey, look, Dr. Phil, Thurgood Marshall, Arif Darrow, the Dalai Lama couldn't handle that. So.
Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is a heel. Champ, I disagree with you when you say quarterback. I believe, in my opinion, if Aaron Rodgers wasn't this all-time pantheon quarterback, we would hold Aaron Rodgers to an entirely different standard. And look, but I also said, Champ, the reason, no matter how much Tim Tebow is like, yeah, he's a great guy. He'll say and do all the right things. He will conduct himself. But at the same time, I'm trying to win. And Aaron is still being that same type of person, but he's not producing. So it's easier for me to move on from someone who is a prick while not producing. I brought up the example on your show, Undisputed World Champ Podcast. Please go check it out every Saturday night, 9 p.m. on YouTube with BRF Sports and Flash. I brought up a certain wrestler who Flash considers the GOAT, Shawn Michaels. How was Shawn Michaels behaving? How did Shawn Michaels conduct himself back in the 90s?
No, he was a douchebag.
I was about to say not good until you brought that up, but we'll just stick with that one. We'll stick with that.
Remember,
I mean, they don't need to beat around the bush. I mean, Shawn Michaels was a total douche. I mean, he was spoiled. I mean, just stayed in a negative mindset as far as people's thoughts, like the way his attitude was, the way he talked to people, but he got passes because he was arguably the best wrestler on that roster. So, I mean,
and also Vince, him and Vince, the relationship that they had, and plus Flash, to validate my point, he brought up the Undertaker. Remember, Undertaker said it himself. If Shawn was on fire, I wouldn't even set the fire out. I don't want to say the exact term that Undertaker said because it sounds just weird. But remember, Champ, and you said this yourself, and you've brought this up numerous times. Undertaker would have done something to Shawn Michaels had Shawn Michaels not dropped the belt to Steve Austin at WrestleMania 14. He was in gorilla position. And look, Shawn, at the end of the day, I'm trying to win. Regardless how difficult you are as a human being, as a person, I can put that aside. And I'm going to say, look, I don't have to be friends with this dude. I don't have to get along with this dude. But at the end of the day, I know he can work his ass off. I know he can do the job. And to me, that's all that matters. I put my personal emotions and feelings aside, and I say, look, I know what you can do. I know what you can contribute. Regardless of my issues with you, I'm going to have you. Because if I lose you, who else am I going to find to replace you? Who else am I going to find that's comparable? Aaron Rodgers, no question about it. Back to Aaron Rodgers. He is a heel. He's a heel because he's being an absolute liar. First of all, let's bring up the immunized. When a reporter asked you about the vaccination status, you said, I'm immunized. It's just a simple, yes, I'm vaccinated. No, I'm unvaccinated. And again, I want to make it abundantly clear. I have no problem with anyone not getting the vaccine. I disagree. But if that's something that you don't want to do, fine. Here's the problem. Aaron Rodgers, I don't want to hear terms where he was deceitful or disingenuous. The dude lied. He lied. And I also don't want to hear any comparisons with him and Kyrie Irving. Because Kyrie Irving told the truth and was willing to accept the consequences. And there have been other examples of players who decided not to get the vaccine, but at least was willing to tell the truth. Kirk Cousins. Oh, speaking of which, remember last year when we said Kirk Cousins or Aaron Rodgers, which quarterback in 2024 would we rather go with? We rather go with Kirk Cousins. Because even though Kirk Cousins is not the talent Aaron Rodgers is, Kirk Cousins' production is decent enough for us to make the playoffs. On top of that, Kirk Cousins is not a prick. Kirk Cousins has said and done all the right things. Even when they drafted his successor, Michael Penix Jr., after paying him a bleep ton of money, Kirk Cousins handled it professional. The first half of the season, the Atlanta Falcons looked like they were going to win the NFC South. Not just that, but perhaps compete in the NFC. At one point, they were 6-3. The second half of the season, they fell apart. Kirk Cousins struggled. They put in Michael Penix Jr. and Kirk Cousins. Did you hear Kirk Cousins complaining, whining, crying? No, he handled it professionally because at the end of the day, look, I want to make sure this young kid is as ready as possible, and I will do whatever it takes to help out the team. You don't see that with Aaron Rodgers, which is exactly why the New York Jets finally had enough and said, look, either you're going to be all in or you're going to be out because we're tired of you missing training camp. We're tired of you going on Pat McAfee show every single week. So are you going to make sacrifices for the team or are you going to do what's best for us? Or are you going to do what's best for Aaron? And Aaron decided, I'm going to do what's best for Aaron. Selfish. The other problem that I had too, champ, is when he went on Pat McAfee show in the aftermath of him lying, him getting exposed about the vaccine. The dude even quoted MLK, which I thought it was pathetic. And he also took a shot at Kyrie Irving because he mentioned flat earther. Remember, Kyrie once claimed that the earth was flat. Do you remember, champ? And this is very personal because I know you. Remember Deshaun Kaiser? Remember when he went on a podcast years ago? And remember when Aaron Rodgers asked him, do you believe in 9/11? Remember that?
Yeah.
And with Aaron going on these ridiculous ass conspiracy theories and everything else, you're like, bro, are you delusional? And again, go. You about to say something, champ?
Either that or he been freebasing, one of the two. I would like to say he's delusional, but people freebase every day, so
Never know.
you never know.
He probably on ayahuasca, something that after all, he flies all the way to Peru in order to do it. But that's a story for another day. But the thing is, with Aaron Rodgers, he's a heel. He's just made it more difficult for people like us to accept. He's a great football player. I've said it before. He's top 5 of all time. But as a human being, he's horrible. He's difficult to work with. And there have been teammates, Donald Driver, Jermichael Finley, Greg Jennings, has called them out. And for so long, people ignored it because of how great Aaron was. Now that he's no longer great, what do you have to say? And the things that he's done, it's 2.0 compared to his predecessor, Brett Favre. Favre, as difficult as he was during the last few years in Green Bay, was he really known for being a bad teammate? No. Brett Favre had some problems. He had some demons, sometimes on and off the football field, especially off the football field. But I've never heard anyone say he was a horrible teammate. So, heel with Aaron Rodgers. All right, another one. It's a really polarizing one. Ray Lewis.
He's a tweener. He's a tweener.
Yeah.
I have to say he's a tweener. The reason why is you have to take into account public opinion. And as much as we say, well, we don't care about public opinion, when you're being judged as a good guy or a bad guy, then public opinion matters. Because not only from the incident back in 2000 that, we will not mention. If you want to know what happened in 2000,
Just read the facts.
2000 season, Google is free. Go look it up. Not just because of that, but some of the stances that he had on the kneeling, which didn't give him a lot of fans. It really didn't give him a lot of fans. Remember, him and Shannon Sharp was going at it on
Undisputed. And also there was even one time in which he even kneeled during the anthem. And he deemed what Colin Kaepernick's actions were inappropriate.
Yeah. So it would depend. Like I said, he's a tweener because guess what? Who doesn't want to be the greatest linebacker of all time, as far as the middle linebacker of all time? I would say. Who doesn't want to be the greatest middle linebacker of all time? Win 2 Super Bowls, be passionate, be an inspiration. I mean, to have your statue out front of that stadium for years to come, to be synonymous with winning, not to mention your faith. You know, he always talks about his faith and how that got him through what he went through in
Atlanta.
you know, he that always. But as far as public opinion is concerned, you have to say tweener, not just because of what happened in 2000, but because, you know, some of the stances that he had, which you can have a stance that's against the masses. You can have a stance against what's popular. Remember, so I want people to remember something. Joe Louis was the greatest world heavyweight champion, arguably of all time. He held the title for almost 20 years. But when Muhammad Ali refused to go in the draft in Vietnam, the person who disagreed with him was Joe Louis. Now in turn, he called Joe Louis certain names because of that. But the thing is, different generation. Joe Louis, during World War II, he enlisted. And not only that, made sure that Jackie Robinson went to officer candidate school. Yeah. So it would, like I said, it's not just, you can have an opinion that's different from the masses, but understand the criticism that's going to go along with that. Like I said, Joe Louis was responsible for a lot of things that happened in the United States Army during World War II. So when he disagreed with Muhammad Ali versus when everybody else was taking Muhammad Ali's side, as we saw the whole press conference, when you saw some of the greatest leaders of all time in the community, you know, Jim Brown, you know, just to name a few, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, just to name a few, Joe Louis did not like that stance. Why? Because he served in World War II, and he himself stated that you could serve in a purpose kind of like I did. Joe Louis wasn't on the front lines in World War II. He was more of a spokesperson and entertainment, put on all types of exhibitions for the U.S. Army. And he felt like Muhammad Ali could do things like what he did. And like I said, he made a lot of difference in the Army on a political level as well. Like I said, made sure that Jackie Robinson could go to officer candidate school, where Jackie Robinson became a lieutenant. So yeah, of course, when when you disagree against a popular opinion, guess what? You're going to be deemed a bad guy. But that comes with the territory. But it's not just that. People are still holding 2000 against him. And people, even at the end of his career, remember Boomer Esiason was still bringing that up. To the point where Shannon Sharp almost want to fight Boomer Esiason on national television because of that.
NFL on CBS.
Yes, because he was like, why are we bringing this up? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? So, yeah.
And Shannon would feel that way with Ray Lewis, because remember, even Shannon Sharp talked about how Ray Lewis lived at his place during that time.
Yes. So, yeah, it depends on, he is a tweener because of 2000. People still think that incident defines him, I will say. Then, you know, his stance against Colin Kaepernick.
Right.
So, and, you know, the kneeling. So when you count that into the equation, although overall you could say he's a man of faith, great football player, did a lot for the community on his own, gave to a lot of charities, did a lot of charity events. You can say he's a good guy because of that, but because of those two things, you have to put him as the tweener. And like I said, when you go against an opinion, when you go against popular opinion, it's always going to be backlash. Like I said, Joe Louis did not agree with Muhammad Ali when he did what he did. Different generation. But like I said, did that warrant Joe Louis being called what he got called by a lot of guys in turn? No, because if you understood what Joe Louis did in the army and what he did for the nation, then you wouldn't say that. But because he went against Muhammad Ali in his stance against the Vietnam War, that's why he got the label that he did. Sort of like Ray Lewis with the whole kneeling situation with Colin Kaepernick. But like I said, because of those two reasons, he will be considered a tweener.
In fairness to Ray Lewis regarding the Kaepernick situation, champ, because we talked about this on your pod. Remember, Colin Kaepernick's girlfriend, now wife, Nessa, she posted a picture on Twitter depicting Steve Buscemi, for those who may not know, that is the owner of the Baltimore Ravens, and Ray Lewis of the characters of Django Unchained. In the case of Steve Buscemi, she depicted him as Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Calvin, the slave owner. In the case of Ray Lewis, she depicted him as Samuel L. Jackson's character, Stephen, the Uncle Tom or the house slave. So I will defend Ray Lewis in that aspect because I thought the tweet was very inappropriate. And the fact that Colin Kaepernick, who chose not to say anything, implies to me that he co-signed, that he had no problem with what his girlfriend, now wife, did. So I will give Ray Lewis that. Yeah, he's a tweener. Greatest middle linebacker, one of the greatest speakers from an athlete. Like anytime when you listen to Ray Lewis speak, heart, intensity. Mind you, he's not the biggest linebacker in the world when he first came out. Small dude, very underestimated. But he played with a lot of heart. I think it's I think some like Brian Pillman once said, it's not the size in the dog in the fight, it's the size in the fight in the dog. Ray Lewis had a lot of dog in him and played through injuries, great years of production, was the face of the franchise for the Baltimore Ravens for 17 years. Greatest defense, arguably, the 2000 Ravens defense that led to them winning the Super Bowl. But unfortunately for Ray Lewis, no matter what, you're always going to bring up Atlanta. That's Super Bowl. You're going to bring up the other things as you mentioned, champ. So based on that and that alone, he's a tweener. BRF?
Yeah, I think the board's unanimous. Ray Lewis is definitely a tweener. And I mean, when you saw him play, when you saw him on the field, I mean, his intensity was just unmatched. It was second to none. I mean, he's the greatest middle linebacker of all time. I think the only linebacker in NFL history I think you can arguably say he's in a class with, he's in a tier with, is Lawrence Taylor. Is Lawrence Taylor. When you're looking at all-time great linebackers, I only think him and Lawrence Taylor are the standard for what overall linebacker play is in the National Football League. And he played the game the right way. I mean, you can never say Ray Lewis never played the game the right way. He played it with passion. He played it with heart. He played it with intensity. And he was a 4-down. He's a 4-down. He's a 3-down, 4-down linebacker. He was on the field. Like you never had to take him out. I mean, there was really no weaknesses in his game. Amazing run defender, could rush the passer when he needed to, could play in coverage, could do everything you ask him at a linebacker to do. His IQ was off the charts. He was amazing, being able to read keys of the offensive line, being able to know where they're going before the offensive line even snapped the ball or took off. I mean, Ray Lewis was just an amazing linebacker, diagnosing plays and making plays in the backfield. So that was really the babyface side of him. Oh, and not to mention one of the most motivational speakers I've ever heard, as far as like from an athlete's perspective. I mean, Ray Lewis mic'd up was always just it was must see. It was entertainment, but it would also you didn't even have to be a football player, and Ray Lewis mic'd up would get you hyped to do something because he
I
just
forgot.
put that
I
like you
forgot.
would if you were a
Oh no,
teammate
I
of his,
forgot.
you would run through a wall for him.
I forgot. We
What's
didn't
up?
even mention him doing the pregame dances. You know when they played the Nelly song "Hot in
Oh,
Here."
bruh, bruh. Let me tell you something. One of the greatest pregame rituals of all time. I mean, one of his favorite movies was Gladiator. So he had the little patch of grass right there. Kind of, pick it up. Kind of threw it in the air, threw it on himself. Kind of like, like what Russell Crowe did, like what Russell Crowe did in the movie Gladiator before he fought. He had the grass ready, he picked it up, and then he get into his dance. I mean, just everything about Ray Lewis on the football field screamed babyface. Everything on the football field screamed babyface. Now, in terms of off the field, of course we're gonna go back. I mean, it kind of sucks, but Super Bowl 34 weekend is going to define him. Is going to define him. That moment is going to define him off the field, and it's just and yeah, and like some of the stances that he's taken, and also particularly being a very religious individual. I mean, some of the stances that he's taken. I mean, that's the side that kind of brings it in the middle because there are things about him off the field that a lot of people aren't going to like, and it's kind of like they kind of hold that against him. So yeah, so for me, the board's unanimous. I mean, Ray Lewis is definitely a tweener. Just you have the football side, and then you just have everything else. It's kind of like in the middle. You're gonna have those that ride with him, they're gonna support him. You're gonna have those that can't stand him, and because they always point back, and like yeah, and you brought up the whole Colin Kaepernick situation and him being, him taking his stance on it and not getting a lot of support, not getting a lot of friends from it. So yeah, Ray Lewis for me. I think the board is unanimous. Definitely a tweener.
All right, fellas. This next one, last one. BRF champ. I hope you're setting very well. Big Ben.
Tweener. He's a tweener for me too. Um, on the field, I mean, it's kind of like there's kind of similarities there as far as like just talking about Ray Lewis, like his ability to play the game. I mean, he set a bunch of records playing quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. One help him win 2 championships. I think with all due respect to Terry Bradshaw, I think Ben Roethlisberger is the greatest quarterback in Pittsburgh Steelers history. I know Terry Bradshaw's got the 4 rings, but you look at Ben Roethlisberger and his stats and his numbers and what he did with the championships, but just being on the positive side of the stats and the numbers being able to produce with Terry Bradshaw, we kind of look at him, despite having the 4 rings, as being one of the more overrated quarterbacks in the history of the National Football League because he wasn't necessarily the greatest quarterback, and he benefited in the 70s of having arguably the greatest established defense in the history of the league with with the steel curtain, with the Jack Hams, with the Jack Lamberts, with Mean Joe Green, with LC Greenwood. I mean, just those defenses are just in a league of their own in terms of their historical value to the league and how dominant they were for basically the entire decade of the 70s. I mean, there are very few defenses that hold a candle to the steel curtain as Terry Bradshaw was very beneficial of that. Don't get me wrong, he was a clutch player, but in terms of just overall performance, I'm not ashamed to say Ben Roethlisberger is a better quarterback than Terry Bradshaw. When you look at on the field performance, the numbers he put up is just everything he did and all the records he set. So I'm not ashamed to say that Ben Roethlisberger is the greatest quarterback in Steelers history. But when you think about Ben Roethlisberger, the reason why I think he's a tweener is Millersville. I mean, what more can you say? It's
And
Millersville.
also,
It's that incident at that club in Millersville.
and also Lake Tahoe, Nevada. He had 2.
Exactly. Exactly. So I mean, there are just incidents with Ben Roethlisberger off the field that just rubs you absolutely the wrong way in terms of him looking at him from a humane perspective. So I mean, yeah, Ben Roethlisberger for me is a tweener. He played the game the right way. He set tons of records. He was an amazing quarterback for a long time. But his off the field behavior leaves a lot to be desired. So yeah, Ben Roethlisberger is definitely a tweener for me.
Champ?
Tweener, and I don't think that those 2 incidents says it all on why. But remember when he got towards the end of his career, and people was asking him, well, how this? Because the offense was kind of stagnant at a certain point. He wasn't at the end, but about 4 years before he was, about 4 to 5 years before he was at the end, they asked him a question, and he was like, hey, maybe I ain't got it no more, because it was controversy going on between him and Mike Tomlin, him and Antonio Brown, him and some of the star players that they had on that team. And he started saying, well, maybe I just need to retire. And for him to bring it up in the middle of the season, people was kind of getting on him about that, not to mention some of the disparaging things that some can say rightfully so now at Antonio Brown, but at the time, people was really getting on to Big Ben about throwing his wide receivers under the bus at a certain point. So yeah, not to mention, when he had that concussion, there was a lot of speculation that, he didn't come back as quick as he should have. Remember Hines Ward saying there's been times where I've lied to doctors and told them I was feeling well when I really didn't. And, that caused a lot of concern on the team. But like I said, the things that happened in Millersville, not to mention in Lake Tahoe, and luckily for him, I will say, that didn't happen during the social media era. Had those 2 incidents happened during the social media era now, it would have been more smoke blown than anything. I'm just being very, very honest. But because it did not happen during the social media era, although all of these resources on the internet is free, mainly Google, Bing, and all of that is free, people are not going to go look it up. They just want to be right. But I digress. Yeah, BRF, it's true. But yeah, he's a tweener. Like I said, not just because of some of the things off the field, but things on the field as well. Some of the criticisms that he had of his wide receivers and some of his star players, and him saying, well, maybe I need to retire. So there's been some diva moments that Ben Roethlisberger has had. There has been some, but hey, when you think about those 2 incidents, though his name is synonymous with him. Not to mention, a lot of people will blame him a little bit, especially him being a quarterback during that time, which is the reason why that team did not win when they had all of those star-studded players.
He's a tweener. I still believe he's going to go into the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the accusations, despite his past. No, just the Stay Tuned line. Shout out to Jay Bailey and the crew. We're just talking about Babyface and Heel. Just talking about athletes or celebrities, whether they're good guys, bad guys, and stuff. One of them we're discussing right now is Ben Roethlisberger. So, but Big Ben to me is a tweener. He is always going to be revered in Pittsburgh. So no matter what, no matter how you feel about him as a human being, he's going to be revered, and he's always going to be revered in Pittsburgh. Plus, you mentioned this before, Chad. He won Super Bowls with multiple coaches. Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin. Despite the accusations, despite his past, Ben will get in because it's Pittsburgh. So you kind of get like some type of treatment with the special preferential treatment. That's how it is. Do I think Ben is a first ballot? No, but maybe if you want to make an argument like a second or a third ballot, that's fine with me. But unfortunately for Ben, those accusations. And I mean, nobody's going to forget that. Nobody's going to forget what transpired in Lake Tahoe, Nevada, and nobody ain't going to forget what happened in Millersville, Georgia, in which, by the way, he was suspended for 6 games, but then reduced to 4.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed like to me with the 6-4, it seemed like to me you kind of settled. That's to me. If you didn't do it, then you shouldn't receive any punishment. But the fact that you got 4 games, but as a football player, I love watching Ben play. Big, mobile, athletic, strong arm. I mean, when you look at guys like Josh Allen, guys like that, you think of Big Ben in terms of the playing style.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give Ben a lot of credit. He did play for a storied franchise for 18 years. I agree with BRF, even though Terry Bradshaw has more Super Bowls and is 4-0. I think Ben is just a better quarterback. Ben's just a better passer, in my opinion. So I'll give credit to Ben. Plus, he's also more athletic, more mobile. Ben can make types of plays. No one's going to, I mean, the 2 Super Bowls, the first one that he won, it was really more of the defense. The second time when he won it, that was very impressive. The comeback drive, the game-winning touchdown throw to Santonio Holmes, that was very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very polarizing figure, but I'll say tweener at best. And also he's doing a lot of things as far as with the community in Pittsburgh. He also has his own podcast now. He's gotten people on the show. He even got Pat McAfee on his podcast. But anything you want to add, BRF?
No, I'm just gonna say, like, you were talking about Ben. I honestly don't think it's an opinion as far as like him being a better quarterback than Terry Bradshaw. The numbers back that up. I mean, the number, the stats and the numbers support it. I don't think it should be opinionated. I think it's just facts. Ben Roethlisberger is a better quarterback than Terry Bradshaw.
Just the eye test.
It's the eye test. It's the eye test. Big Ben just did everything on a higher level from the quarterback position than Terry Bradshaw. I don't think it's really opinionated. I think it's facts, and I think it's eye test. It's right there for everybody to see. If you look me in the straight face and say Terry Bradshaw is better than Ben Roethlisberger, I'm probably gonna laugh in your face.